Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 150. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in the state of Pennsylvania, we have a very, very, very special guest, Evelyn Barskey. Evelyn, what's going on?
Not much. I'm honored and very excited to share my story, to be on here today. So thank you for having me.
It is an absolute honor. It is long overdue. And I guess for a little bit of context before I throw the mic over to you for the introduction, we've been working together now for, I believe it's been about a year, right?
I believe a little over a year. I think we started in October 2022, I want to say.
Man, time flies when you're having fun. I guess it has been that long. And through our relationship as coach client, I've learned so much about you, your story, your mindset. And I know there's so much value for people listening. And I want to preface all of this by saying your story is deep in a lot of ways. There's a lot there. I hope people listening can appreciate that and maybe take the time to pay extra attention to everything that you have to say. And with that being said, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the people listening.
Yeah, so like Joe said, my name is Evelyn. And this intro, I'm going to break it up into two parts, who I am and then what I do. So who I am, first and foremost, is a child of God. I am a Christian. And then after that, I am a partner to my taller half, Jeremy, as well as a friend. I'm a very, very loyal friend. And as far as what I do, I have a full-time job as a quality tech in the manufacturing industry, which can be at times very fulfilling and frustrating at the same time. Outside of that, I am also a photographer and a YouTuber and a hybrid athlete.
There are so many different things that you do. And I love that you broke the intro down into who you are versus what you do, because I think that's something a lot of people get confused. It's, titles with identity. And it can be hard when people identify with their titles, because when those titles are taken away, when you're no longer a YouTuber, you are no longer in manufacturing, you're no longer XYZ, it can feel like you lost everything that you are. And so I love that you led with that one thing that will never be taken away from you, which is your faith. And so before we dive into things and I ask some hard questions, I want to share a thought that's been on my mind a lot recently, and one that I think of you when I think of. So the thought is, it takes a strong, confident, and secure person to celebrate another person's wins when they're still waiting for a win of their own. And through our time working together, you and I have worked on a lot of different things, from building a photography business to the YouTube channel to running to mindset in general. And I've watched you behind the scenes struggle with certain things. And despite those struggles, I've also watched you in public support the heck out of everybody that you support, right? You will go above and beyond, more so than almost anybody else I know, to encourage, support, celebrate the people that you care about, even when life is not going maybe the way that you want it on your own terms. And that's such a beautiful thing. My question for you, has that always been who you are?
Wow. Yeah. As an adult, yeah. Um, and we'll get into that, I guess, with the first question, but that kind of goes back to how I was raised and what I went through as a child to turn that into um like a superpower, right? To be able to support others um no matter what they're going through, no matter what I'm going through, to just be there and be the light for whoever I can be.
So, since you alluded to it, and I know this will open up a whole lot of different conversation for us, I'll ask, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
Yeah, so that is 100% my childhood. So I grew up in foster care from about the time I was in third grade all the way up until I graduated high school. And there was 1 year in between, I think it was like fifth grade, where I was able to live with my dad, but that didn't go so well. So we ended up back in foster care.
Hmm. Wow, that was succinct because there's
Yeah,
a lot there to unpack. And so why don't we go back to the beginning of foster care? And if you don't mind sharing a little bit about what that experience was like to realize that this was the path that your childhood was taking, that you would not be living with your biological parents.
yeah. So How and I guess I'll start with, like, how we ended up, I say we, I do have a younger brother, how we ended up in foster care. It's because my biological parents weren't capable of taking care of us. My parents divorced at a very young age. I don't even remember how old I was, and, we lived with our biological mother, and she just wasn't capable of taking care of us in the right way. There were some things that happened, things that went on that I guess somehow the state got alerted of, and they came in and took us away and put us with um, a family nearby, foster family nearby.
Hmm. As a child, what emotions were associated with that time where you are now living with someone who you didn't know?
It was definitely scary at first, and I mean, I was so young, I really don't remember how I reacted. Um, I know that the first foster family that I was with, they were the ones who introduced me to faith, to God. So they were a religious family. So that's how I got introduced to Christianity. Um, yeah, I honestly can't really remember too much about that first foster family. I mean, we were only with them for like a year. Like I said, they introduced us to faith. I remember learning how to ride a bike with and without training wheels when I was there. So, I mean, they took good care of us. But eventually, I guess they wanted to move on with their life, with their family, because they had young children of their own. So they were more focused on growing their actual family.
Overall, how many different foster homes were you in total?
Just 2.
Mm.
So it was that first one, and then the second one we got put into when I was in 4th grade. I stayed with that person, all the way up. My brother and I both stayed with that person all the way up until I graduated high school.
And so when you look back at that second experience, what was the hardest part of that? Or what were the hard parts of that?
Yeah, the hard parts of that was, she was a very strict, mother, very strict person. She's been in foster care for years, by the time we got to her, and she had 2 grown children of her own who were starting their own families. So she was very old school, very strict, but she was, also like very tough. There was a lot of emotional and mental abuse um, that kind of happened while we were there, and that was probably the hardest part about being there.
Mm. Are
It was
you
just,
are you willing to expand a bit on the mental and emotional abuse part?
yeah, there I got called just to I guess really not sugarcoat it, but like I got called an idiot and a moron a lot as a kid. If we didn't do something the correct way, we'd get in trouble for it, get grounded for it. And like even her rules about friends, like and which I guess a lot of parents have that rule where they have to meet the friend's parents first before the child can go over to the house just to be sure that everything's okay. But because of that, we didn't really bother going over to friends' house that much or having friends over to visit us just because of the type of household that it was.
Mm. And so I'm sure it was hard to process at the time, but now in hindsight, how did those things impact you? How did being called names, dealing with the emotional side of that, and then also maybe not being able to develop a whole lot of deep friendships, how did those two things impact you as you grew up?
Yeah, so um I kind of just started keeping all of my emotions to myself, really. I wouldn't express how I was feeling just for the fear of, you know, suffering from that mental or emotional abuse, and I kind of just kept to myself. Um didn't Yeah, didn't really have too many friends. Like I would go to school and hang out with my friends there. Um, didn't really do anything outside of school. Like I didn't play sports or anything like that. So nothing extracurricular. It was just, go to school, come home, do my homework, and, go to bed, that kind of thing. So I was very closed in, and it took me a long time. Um, as an adult, it took me a few years after I reached adulthood to really start um, getting in touch with my feelings and learning how to express myself.
Hmm. Okay. Got a couple different thought processes here. So we'll take them one by one. First, if somebody out there listening is also having trouble getting in touch with what they're feeling, their emotions, can you describe what it was like to get back in touch with that? And maybe if you had to do it all over again, what are some strategies or how would you approach that, getting in touch with your emotions?
Yeah, so I guess for me, what helped me was finding my people,
Mm,
right? Finding friends as an adult that um, liked me for me, and even I to back up just a little bit, I made a friend my senior year of high school, and she became my best friend, and she still is my best friend to this day. And she was like the first person outside of my family to tell me that she loved me and that she cared about me as a person. So yeah, for me it was finding friends, finding people who saw me for who I was, and that helped me develop my confidence to be able to start really figuring out, how to deal with my emotions
mm,
and how to open up, as you would say.
mm. There's this saying, don't go where you're tolerated, go where you're celebrated. And I think there's a big difference between just existing in places where people tolerate your presence versus being around people who are happy to see you, who actively encourage you, who want to support you. And as an adult, it can be hard to find those people. And one of the reasons why Project Endure holds such a special place in my heart is because I hope that it can be a place where people can come and just find other good people to get through some of the hard things in life. And I've been able to see you make connections within, our ecosystem, within the tribe that is Project Endure. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I definitely feel like I have grown a lot over the past year or so since I've been part of the community. And it's just because I'm surrounded, right, by like-minded individuals who are all chasing after things that they're passionate about and who are all like myself, willing to support and be there for each other no matter where we're at in the world or in the country. You know, we always have each other's back. I have closer relationships with many of the people that I've met through Project Endure, and we're always talking to each other, hopping on FaceTime calls and catching up.
Yeah. And that brings such a big smile to my face, just because in a selfish way, I get to introduce my friends to new friends and also make new friends through that. And to watch the web get stronger, the relationships deepen, the tribe grow is beautiful. And so, to take us back to foster care for a second, I'm going to share a quote, and then I would love to hear your response to this quote. So, the quote is from Hal Elrod, and he said, "Remember that you are always exactly where you need to be, experiencing exactly what you need to experience, so that you can learn what you must learn in order to become the person you need to be to create everything else you want for your life." Tell me if that quote rings true when you look back to all of the hard things that you had to go through in childhood.
100%. Yeah. I it's made me the person that I am today. Like the reason why I'm so encouraging and uplifting others and supporting them all the time is because I know what it's like to not have that support. And I don't want anyone to feel that way because it's a very bad feeling. Like I've yeah, like during that time I've had some really, really low lows because of that. And it's my mission now to make sure that no matter what anybody's feeling, like a bad feeling, like if I can help in any way, even if it's just to make them smile or laugh, like I want to be able to do that.
Mm. So there's a quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that I've shared. I don't know. We're 150 episodes deep. I'm going to ballpark and say I've shared this 10 times throughout the life of this podcast, but I'll share it again because it's so powerful. She said, "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen." And that's you, right? In many ways, that's you. And just to go the extra layer deep of your story, to hear about the low, the low, low, low points, I would love for you to share that. And I believe I know what it is. And you can preface it to the audience however you'd like, but take us to the low point so that we understand more of who you are today.
Yeah. On so I reached like a really low low like on my 17th birthday. Um I can't remember how it came about. It's possible I might have gotten in trouble for something. I don't remember, but it affected me to the point where I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't do life. I don't wanna live. So I went um down into our basement and found an electrical extension cord, an outdoor extension cord, and I tried to hang myself. And I mean, like I it was one of those things where the basement ceiling wasn't high enough for the height I was at the time, so it ended up, like, not really working correctly, and I ended up just, like, because of, like, the lack of oxygen to my head, it was making my head hurt, and I ended up just, like, unwrapping it because that pain was worse than the emotional pain that I was going through, so I'm like, "Okay, like, um, I've had enough," so I unwrapped it, but, yeah, so that was the lowest low point that I ever hit.
Mm. Thank you for sharing. And if you could go back and talk to Evelyn as she was setting up that electrical cord, what would you tell her?
Um, I would tell her, like, "Don't. Like, you don't need to do this. I know it hurts, but life gets better."
I know that what you just said is going to meet someone right where they need it. And usually I save this for the end, but it makes sense to throw in here. If anybody needs to talk, if anybody wants a listening ear, I think I can speak for both of us when I say that you are there and I am here, and we would both love to hear from you. Um, and so, with that being said, Evelyn, we get back up to speed, and present day life has gotten a lot better since then. What's one lesson you learned through your childhood? All of your life experience up to this point has taught you this thing. What is it?
Um, oh, that's a good question. That I'm stronger, uh, definitely stronger than I give myself credit for, um, than I realize, right? To have gone through all that and still be here on the other side doing what I'm doing now, right? I think that's like a true testament to my strength.
I agree with that. And it transitions well into the next question because I don't believe that you can find strength without going through struggle. I don't think you can know what it feels like to be strong if you've never felt weak. And sometimes life hands that to us, and other times we have to go out and create that for ourselves. And so when you look back at your life to this point, what's the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose? And why did you do that thing?
Yeah. So back when we first scheduled this podcast, I had an answer in mind, and then not long after we scheduled it, I went and did something that was that trumped that as the hardest thing that I ever did physically and mentally as well. So
So, why don't we start with the thing you were going to share, and then we will get to the thing that you just experienced.
yeah. So my original answer was going to be my prep for the half marathon that I did last year in June. It was the first prep of any kind that I've done. And I was still new to running. I'd only started running in November of 2022. And then in January of 2023, I was like, okay, I'm signing up for a half marathon and we're going to start training for it. So, and it was hard in a way, like I was running mileages that I never even thought I could run before, as well as balancing my full-time job and doing YouTube videos. I was doing 2 YouTube videos a month, which was, like, insane to me to be able to keep up with all that. My photography did take a dip, during that time period as well, which was a little bit frustrating as I wanted to build, my photography business, but yeah, that was my original answer.
And so I think there's value in breaking that down a bit before we get to the next thing. So during that period of time, you were pushing new limits in an area that hadn't been previously explored. And you were also navigating other areas of life that you only had a finite amount of energy for, and you needed to determine what are my priorities and where am I going to place that energy. And so take us through some of the struggles, balancing this side passion of photography, full-time work, fitness endeavors, relationships, etc., How did you go about processing some of that? And I, of course, have an inside look because we did some of that together, but share for the audience how you processed all that.
Yeah, so what helped me a lot other than our talks about it was having a schedule, like knowing what days I was going to do what, and yeah, just being able to see that through. Like I already know like my full-time job lasts these hours Monday through Friday. So how can I fit the running and the filming the YouTube in in alongside that, as well as trying to make sure that I'm still available for my partner as well. And I think I don't think I spent as much time with him outside of prep as I should have. So our relationship was fine. Like he knew what I was doing, he supported what I was doing, but I also did sacrifice some quality time with him there as well.
Sure. And so, in different words, me and the last podcast guest, episode 149, Greg Scheinman, we talked about balance. And I think balance is almost this ambiguous thing people try to make tangible. People try to find balance, they try to create balance, they try to hold balance in their hands. And in my eyes, there's really no such thing as balance when it comes to work and life and fitness and relationships. It's just managing seasons of imbalance. It's understanding that at some points in our lives, work might take up a lot more time and energy, and we have less time for fitness. In another season of life, we might be really focused on training for something fitness oriented, and we might have to sacrifice some time with our significant other. And of course, where this all gets complicated is navigating it with the other people who are impacted by it. That's a whole nother topic. I'm sure I could talk about that for hours when it comes to marriage and running a business and maintaining fitness and all these other things. But to just drive home your point, you were in a season of imbalance, and that required you to set priorities and then make sure that how you were spending your time was a reflection of what you said your priorities were. And that's not an easy thing to do always.
Right. Yeah.
And so from there, was there another hard part about training for that race when it came to the physical side of things? Because you haven't mentioned yet at all kind of a potential physical barrier that you have no choice in the matter of.
Oh yeah. So yeah, so I have a genetic condition in my back. It's called Bertolotti syndrome. And to put it in layman's terms, basically the part of my spine overgrew, and it grew into like my pelvic bone, and like my spine and my pelvic bone are like pretty much almost touching. So there are times, and for the most part, I think I've narrowed it down to just like drastic changes in the weather, um, to where it causes me a lot of pain in my back. Normally, in my back and my hip, normally on the right side. So when that would flare up, it would affect how I could run, like my stride length, mostly my stride length. So that was difficult trying to navigate during that prep.
I love that you didn't even think to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so used to living with it and dealing with it. I don't even remember. I think I was maybe like 26 or 27, like when I figured out that I had it. Um, so yeah.
And again, just to draw out a bigger point here, I think you, along with all human beings, are adaptable and resilient, or at least we are capable of being those things. And, countless times on this podcast and just acquaintances in my own life, I've seen and heard of people who have dealt with such hard things that they cannot change that do impact their day to day life. And at some point, they just don't think about it so much because it just is their reality. And they understand that they can't change it. And so they might as well just do their best and keep moving forward.
Absolutely, yeah. It's And running doesn't seem to flare it up. I haven't had any, like, on my long runs, I don't come back and have hip pain or anything like that. It's Yeah, so I know running doesn't negatively impact that, and that was actually one of my fears when I was starting to think about running. I know that was one of the things holding me back, because I wasn't sure, like, how my body would handle that.
Mm. So, with all of that being said, speaking of long runs, I won't give it away, but why don't you tell everyone listening what the new hardest thing you've ever done on purpose was?
Yeah. So the new hardest thing that I've done on purpose is, a few weeks ago, it might be like a month by now. But we got some snow here in Pennsylvania, about like 4 to 5 inches, like midweek. And I had a long run scheduled for that Saturday. I believe I was supposed to hit 17 miles.
Mhm.
Yeah, 17 miles. And I knew there was going to be snow on the trail, but I went out anyway, and I attempted to run in it, and I got about half a mile in, where and I figured out, like, yeah, I'm not moving very fast. It's like running in sand. So I was burning myself out very early. I realized that, so I actually called you or texted you and said, "Hey, I can't run this. Can I hike it?" Because I realized I can still walk through the snow. So why not? I still have to get 17 miles. I can do it this way. So you agreed, and I set out on a hike, for a 17-mile hike. And it was it was interesting, to say the least, right? It wasn't so bad up until the point where I got lost and I realized I was lost. So at some point, I don't remember what the mileage was, but I had wandered off the trail. And I didn't realize I had wandered off the trail until I came to a point that I didn't recognize. And at that time, the whole situation kind of set in on me. I was like, okay, I've been out here for, I don't know, it might have been around like 5 or 6 miles by then, a couple hours, and it's below freezing. I'm trudging through, 4 to 5 inches worth of snow, and I'm lost. This isn't fun anymore. And so I ended up turning around and finding my way back to the trail. And at that point, I made a decision. Do I turn back and head back into my car, or do I set forward again and go the way that I was supposed to go before I got lost? And I decided to go the way I was supposed to go, before I got lost, to make sure I hit that mileage. Um, yeah, so I ended up trudging for a few more hours and decided at one point around like mile 8 or 9 to turn back and head towards the car and come back through. And there was a point where I was on my way back after having been out there for I don't know how many hours by then, where my mind got a little bit dark. It went to like two different things right off the bat. It went to, um, the Israelites, like, going through the desert, after they'd been escaped from Egypt, right, being led by Moses. And then it for some reason, it flashed to, um, death marches from, like, prisoner of wars, when like, back in, like, World War II or something like that. And they were there, my mind was there and back for, like, it was only a matter of seconds to where I, like, snapped myself out of it, like, "Okay, like, this is a very dark place, like, my situation is not as bad as their situation was, and if they can make it through what they made it through, like, I can finish this hike and get back to my car. And to answer the second part of that question, I know I went off on the story tangent. I did it because I didn't think I had a choice. Right, I needed to get the mileage in. We were, very deep into this prep that I'm doing for my first 20-mile trail race, and I didn't have access to a treadmill at the time. So I'm like, I don't know how else to get this mileage in other than, if I can't run, I could still walk, but let's hike it. At least I'm gonna hit the mileage. And I ended up making my way back to the car, and I did come up short on that mileage. I think I came in just under 16 because I can't math good. um, so yeah, that's pretty much the story.
What was the total time for those 16 or so miles?
I think I was out there for about 7 hours, give
Yeah.
or take.
So, a couple things. Two quotes come to mind. One is from Dennis Waitley, who said, "You must look within for value, but you must look beyond for perspective." And I think it's so important to look inside. A lot of the work we've done together is introspective. It's looking inside, and yet oftentimes we need to be able to zoom out and look for perspective. And that's what you did when your mind went to those dark places. It was, hey, other people have had it worse. If people can get through that, I can get through this. And that's such a powerful strategy to use when we're in hard times. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. And just to add a note in there, when I came home, I ended up buying a treadmill, and I uh, I got it in at the beginning of February. So yeah, we're good now.
and so the other quote is from Alexander Dumas, who said, "There is neither happiness nor unhappiness in this world. There is merely the comparison of one state to the other. Only a man who has felt ultimate despair is capable of feeling ultimate bliss." And I share that for a couple of reasons. One, you hit some low points during this experience. And the high points that will come after this experience are going to feel that much higher because you've hit that low. And if we zoom out and just throw that as a blanket on life in general, the low points allow us to feel even more grateful for the high points. And you know, not that we should hope for the lows so that we can experience the highs, but when we are in the lows, we can put that in perspective. The other is that it's a choice, right? How we feel is a choice. And whether it's happiness or gratitude or something else positive, right? We get to choose that. And in that moment, maybe you weren't thrilled, maybe you weren't overly optimistic, but you were able to endure, you were able to choose endurance, you were able to tolerate those conditions because of comparison, because you were able to look at what other people have gotten through, and you knew that if it was possible for them, that this was possible for you. Again, just an exercise in perspective that I think is powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I can use that experience, that if I can make it through, like, we don't know what the conditions are going to be on race day, right? So the fact that I trudged 7 hours through 4 inches of snow, like, whatever comes on race day, like, elements wise, like, no problem, right?
There's something to be said for being prepared. And there are different levels of preparedness, right? I did the bare minimum amount of work, or I did enough work to make this possible. And then there's a level way beyond somewhere where it's like, hey, I did some really, really hard things that I didn't need to do, or maybe even shouldn't have done if we're looking back.
Yeah,
And I got through that. And because of that, I am confident and I am prepared and I am going to do this other thing.
absolutely.
So, with that being said, and that experience behind you, What comes to mind when you think of the word endurance?
Yeah, so endurance to me is like how resilient you are, how resilient you can be. Like no matter what life throws your way, the lows, the highs, that you're always gonna, bounce back up and get back up after getting knocked down. It's your ability to do that.
Mm. And I've shared this thought on the podcast before, but it's worth sharing again. I think endurance with direction is resilience. And so when you choose to endure and you choose to move in the same direction or a similar direction over a long period of time, that's resilience. Because there's a different kind of, I'll put it in air quotes, endurance, which might just be movement, where you just keep going, but you're not going toward anything. You're not going in a meaningful, purposeful direction. You're just moving. And there's a big difference between running in circles and being exhausted. There's a big difference between that and being purposeful in getting back up and taking another step in that same direction where you want to go, despite the resistance and the setbacks that life might put in your path.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I don't always ask this question, Evelyn, and you might not have a great answer, but when you look at the long term of life, what are you pursuing? Where are you going? What is all of this endurance and resilience for or toward?
Oh wow.
I feel like while you think, I'll buy you some time. I feel like I know you well enough to throw a curveball at you. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'll let you think about it. But yeah, that is the question. What are you moving toward when it comes to everything you do, not just the fitness?
I'm moving toward becoming a better version of myself. Right. If I'm looking back at my childhood, I I was overweight, right? I wasn't into fitness at all. Like I said, didn't play sports or anything like that, wasn't athletic. So, the athletic pursuits I'm going after now is helping me to improve my body, to become stronger, to be able to do the things I enjoy doing in older age, once I get there, as well as, uh, all the mental pursuits, the mental challenges that I put myself through, as well as to help me become a better, more rounded individual, to be able to help use my experiences to serve others, to help others, in their journeys where I can.
Mm. I appreciate you answering that curveball of a question. And because you did such a great job, I'm going to throw you one more. This is going to circle back to something you said earlier in the podcast. So take a second to process. But one of the hard things that you've gone through is maybe not having a long term, close knit relationship with people who openly express their love for you, their support for you, um, that they see value in you and who you are. And so growing up that way can present a number of challenges later on in life. Do you feel like it's hard for you to feel a sense of worth, a sense of value, a sense that other people genuinely do care for you and love you because of those experiences earlier on in life?
At first, um, it was hard, like, when I first started learning how to open up and make friends as an adult, right? It was hard to do that. But now that I've surrounded myself with the right people, right, it's so much easier, and now that I've developed, like, a stronger mindset, it's a lot easier to be able to open up and realize that, yes, I found a person who cares about, uh, the person that I am, and not the value that, not like the surface value that I bring them. Like, what can they get out of me? They actually care. Like, okay, who is this person? What do they enjoy doing? Or what do I, who am I? What do I enjoy doing? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great answer. And I appreciate you sharing. And, with that being said, before we get to the final question of the podcast, I want to use this opportunity to ask a question that I don't get to ask every guest. And so we've been working together for a while, and I think I have a good sense of all the different ways that you've grown. But I'm wondering from you, what's the biggest way that you've grown over the past year and a half of our time together?
Not being afraid to go after what I want, right? And not being afraid of getting rejected, right? So if I'm interested in pursuing something, right, I'll shoot out that DM, or I'll ask for that opportunity. And it was a little uncomfortable at first, but now it doesn't even phase me. Like, if I see something I'm interested in, I'll just be like, "Hey, can we do this?" And if it's a no, okay. And if it's a yes, then amazing, let's go.
So I love that you said that because that's one of the things I would have guessed or picked out for you. And I think it's just something to expand upon real quick for everybody listening because asking is uncomfortable. Going after things, knowing that it might not work out, quote unquote, failing, that's uncomfortable. Rejection doesn't feel good. With that being said, one of the reframes that's really helped me when it comes to pursuing opportunities in business or my personal life, or heck, even pursuing my wife, Michaela, it didn't happen overnight. And I think I knew that she loved me way before she knew that she loved me. And I was just determined to help her see that. And it worked out. But my point is, instead of thinking, wow, I might go ask 100 times for this thing and I might get rejected every single time, what if you reframed it and said, if I ask 100 times for this thing, on the 100th time, I'll get that yes. I just have to get to 100. I have to ask 99 times and accept 99 no's. And the 100th time, I'll get a yes. And I would venture to guess that you would get your first yes long before you get anywhere close to 99. There are so many people out there that want to help. There are so many opportunities out there that aren't uh, aren't apparent in plain sight that need to be uncovered through asking, through conversation, through risk taking. And it was way back, I forget what episode of the podcast, Igor Torves, who we both know and love, he shared a phrase with me: fortune favors the brave. When you go and ask, when you're brave, when you're courageous, life seems to work for you. Things happen, but you have to be willing to go make it happen for yourself. And asking is one of those ways we can do that. So, if anybody out there is looking for proof of this, I'll give you an easy example that I heard somewhere else. Go to 100 different Starbucks locations and just ask for a free coffee. Don't give them a reason. Just say, I was just wondering if you'd give me a free coffee. You will get a free coffee well before you hit 100. And if you don't, I will buy you your 100th coffee. So just DM me and I will buy you that 100th coffee, but I won't need to because you'll get a yes long before that. So, with that being said, Evelyn, I know I just went on a tangent there. With all of
Okay.
that behind us, and knowing that this podcast is reaching people all over the world in all different seasons of life, some of them are running right now, just like you do. Some of them are washing dishes, driving a car, doing laundry, maybe just sitting down in bed, getting ready to go to sleep. And you get to speak directly to someone who's going through a hard time, maybe not feeling like they have a close group of friends, maybe feeling like they're lacking direction, maybe feeling a bit discouraged. What would you say to that person?
Yeah. First off, I would say that you are enough. You are worthy, and you're not alone. All right. There's, I don't know how many billions of people on this earth, right? but your tribe, the people who you will resonate with, they're out there. So um, you can use social media. Social media is a great tool for connecting with like-minded individuals with what you're interested in. Um, find your tribe there. Or, if you're more of an in-person type of person, um, get out and explore, like visit the places, do the things that you enjoy doing, and try to meet new people that way. And yeah, and if if you if you need if you can't find your tribe that way, like if you need somebody to talk to, if you don't have close friends, right? Therapy is also a good option, right? I went to therapy as a kid myself to work through some things, and you know that can be a great option too if you need somebody to talk to and help work through what you're dealing with.
I would also add on top of that that if you can't right away find a therapist, if you don't know where to look, you know, talk to God. And if you know God, great, He's there. And if you don't, talk and see what happens. I think you'd be surprised. It's worth a shot, right? And
Yeah.
and you and I both know that. And so, with that being said, Evelyn, I'm actually going to take a piece of your advice, and this episode will come out before the 2024 annual Project Endure event. And so, I'm going to plug the event here. If you're listening to this podcast on April 13th, it's a Saturday, here in Philadelphia, we are hosting our annual Project Endure event. We will have a few hundred of the best human beings you've ever met all in one place, having deep conversations, enjoying food, smiling, laughing, connecting, doing hard things, some fitness, some cold plunges, some other surprises that I can't mention just yet. And we would love to have you. I would also encourage you, if you're on the fence, to consider that you are always one person away, one conversation away, one experience away from a completely different life. And so, if you're on the fence, just consider, is it possible that this day is that for you? We don't bite. We would love to have you. And Evelyn, did I miss anything?
No, you nailed it. That's perfect. That's so awesome.
Cool. It's going to be a blast. Best day ever. And with that being said, Evelyn, if people want to follow along, they want to reach out to you, they want to see what you're up to, where's the best place for people to do that?
All right. So the best place, I hang out mostly on Instagram. It's at Evelyn Barskey. It's my full name. I also have a YouTube channel. So you can see my running journey. I documented my half marathon prep as well as some of this trail race prep that I've been doing uh, this year. So those are
Awesome.
the two main places.
Yeah, I'll link things down below to make it easy to find. And Evelyn, just on the record, I know I tell you this all the time, but I'm so proud of you and so grateful to be able to call you a friend, and very excited to watch you crush this race, and also just to see everything you do afterwards. So thank you again for sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure. And yeah, I appreciate you so much for having me on.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Endure podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Endure Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.